Hello, I'm Max Herzog, Program Manager with Cleveland Water Alliance, and I'm coming to you from Cleveland, Ohio, in the USA. And I'm going to be your next stop on your 24-hour journey in the world of water. Cleveland Water Alliance has partnered with the Water Environment Federation on a number of projects over the years, the Intelligent Water Systems Challenge, the Innovation Clusters meetings, and we always enjoy participating um, in the Innovation Pavilion when we can be in person at WEF Tech. But since everything's gone virtual this year, we're excited to be joining you here on the 24 Hours of Water. We hope you'll enjoy connecting from your place to our space as we get ready for this virtual experience that's going to bring together all of us in the water world for 5 days of learning, networking, and discovering new ways to serve our communities now and in the future. So I'm going to be diving into a little slide deck about our work in intelligent water systems, specifically the Smart Lake Erie initiative. But as you watch, I hope you enjoy. Feel free to reach out in the future if you have questions, and remember to count down and power up for WEF Tech Connect. All right, with that, I will go ahead and share my screen and get this going. So as I mentioned, I'm with the Cleveland Water Alliance, and I'm going to be talking about our Smart Lake Erie initiative, which is one of kind of our broader project areas that we're working on in the space of water and innovation. The Smart Lake Erie initiative really begins on a day that's very familiar for those of us in the Great Lakes region, but might be a little less familiar for folks outside of it. And this is August 5th, 2014. And the site is Toledo, Ohio, one of our partner communities in Cleveland Water Alliance. And on this day, residents of Toledo woke up to see an all too familiar sight, harmful algae, cyanobacteria, clogging up the surface of Lake Erie in the Western Basin where they sit. You can see here a sample of that algae being pulled right in front of the Toledo drinking water intake, which is a couple miles out into the lake. Unfortunately, this day was different than other days in a couple of significant ways. Most relevant to this, the fact that some of this algae was actually able to get through that drinking water intake, through the treatment train and out into distribution before it was detected by utility operators at Toledo's water utility. And so the result was really, quite shocking for folks across the region. The city had to issue a do not drink order to Lucas County, where Toledo sits, as well as the surrounding counties, which ended up depriving over 500,000 people of access to public water for 3 days. So as you might imagine, this was a real shock to people in Toledo and across the Great Lakes region, really kind of driving home the fact that these algal blooms that we've been having for years are a really significant threat to our communities and our drinking water infrastructure. And as I said, it's something that's felt not just in Toledo, but across the region. It's easy to look at sort of the human health and ecological risks posed by harmful algae, but it's not often enough talked about in terms of impact around regional economic development. It's been estimated by a report submitted to the IJC that harmful algal blooms will have a net negative impact of over $1.5 billion over the next 30 years on the Lake Erie region if left unchecked. A lot of folks actually think this number may be an underestimation of the potential impact, but even 1.5 billion is very significant in an area like the Lake Erie region. And this urgency really, is what drove the state of Ohio, the state of Michigan, and the province of Ontario to commit to nutrient reduction goals, 40% reduction in phosphorus pollution into Lake Erie by 2025. Really hoping to curb the source of this problem, primarily agricultural based nutrient pollution, and start to mitigate this kind of ongoing economic, ecological, and social disaster that's been happening every summer in Lake Erie for a number of years. However, folks acting in this space have found that there's frequently, insufficient data to really understand the problem. In some cases, this means not being able to adequately identify the sources of nutrients. But more recently, it's been focused on the inability to assess progress towards goals, or the challenges around assessing progress. Specifically, how do you measure the impact of a nutrient mitigation project, whether that's a best management practice implemented on the agricultural field, or a constructed wetland in the watersheds. These different projects meant to capture nutrients require significant investment, and it's difficult without really granular nutrient data to establish kind of the return on investment for state actors or other folks that are looking to invest in these solutions. And this is really where we as Cleveland Water Alliance began to get involved in this problem. For those who aren't familiar with us, we are a nonprofit economic development organization based in Cleveland, but working across the Lake Erie region, really kind of Detroit to Buffalo is our scope. And our focus is really on water technology and new innovations. How can, the cutting edge of tech be influential and impactful in helping Lake Erie communities solve their water resource challenges? And so when we saw this need for, more granular data, specifically around this harmful algal bloom issue, we began to get involved with our network of partners, utilities, research institutions, and private sector companies to figure out how cutting edge technology and innovation might be able to help tackle this challenge. And through a series of competitions and stakeholder meetings, conversations, we were able to distill down kind of a concept for how we might tackle this. And it's what we've been calling the Smart Lake, or the Smart Lake Erie initiative. And the vision here is really to create a new breed of smart and connected infrastructure, leveraging the lessons, philosophies, and technologies from things like the smart cities movement, taking aspects like distributed sensing, big data analytics, and applying those for public good, and looking at it instead of, a city's traffic infrastructure or energy infrastructure, looking at a region's surface water. So, the Smart Lake is envisioned to enable into what we would call intelligent regional water management, data-driven, data-informed water management by across sector collaborative institutions and communities. And so this is the vision that was kind of established in 2017 we started working on these issues. And since then, we've continued to expand and build upon it through a portfolio of projects. But before we dive into some of those concrete projects, I want to flesh out a little bit what it means to have a smart lake. What does smart look like? And for us, and for most folks in the water space, smart really starts with data. And this data can come from a variety of sources and should come from a variety of sources, including in situ sensors, data sondes, kind of those, physical, real-time or high-frequency devices collecting data in the field, but also remote sensing, whether leveraging satellite imagery or drone flyovers. There's a lot of information that can be pulled through visual or spectroscopic analysis via remote tools. And then, of course, there's actually, physical samples collected and lab analyzed, whether those are grabbed by scientists or through volunteer programs. And these are really important data sources for reinforcing particularly some of those remote sensing products. So, data is that first bucket, bringing together diverse, heterogeneous sets of data to help us understand the baseline of what's going on in the lake and its watersheds. But all that data is useless if we can't interpret it, right? And so a big part of what makes a lake smart is the ability to transform that data into useful information, using analytics and visualizations to interpret and portray what we can know, and then notifications and dashboards, these kind of user-centric tools to connect those data to end users that can use them for action. And that's really the third bucket. If we've got the data, we transform it into information. Part of what makes a lake smart is not the technology that's being used, but the people that can use that technology to act. So in a lot of cases, that's going to be utility operators, but also beach managers, watershed managers, many different actors at the municipal and county level, leveraging these data to better manage their water resources. And of course, there's also a component of this that can involve engaging the public more broadly. So thinking about harmful algal blooms in particular, and where these concepts of data and information and action could be implemented to intervene in the system, we like to take a look at this great graphic from Michigan Sea Grant, and talk through the ways that we see a smart lake, integrating or intervening in this system. There are three kind of key points that we like to talk about. There's the agricultural site where the nutrients are coming from. Generally, in our region, nutrient pollution is driven by runoff of agricultural fertilizer during storm events. There's the watersheds, where those nutrients are flowing through streams and rivers and ditches. And then there's the open lake itself, where those nutrients concentrate and drive these harmful algal blooms. And so, opportunities for smart intervention look different in each of these intervention points, right? Looking at the open water and working back up. In the open water, it's really important to have predictive warnings about the presence of harmful algae, ensuring that nothing like Toledo in 2014 ever happens again. No utilities ever taken by surprise by harmful algae, and that treatment can always happen. But also making sure that folks like beach managers have access to that information so that we can keep people physically safe and away from toxic waters. Looking at the next intervention point in the watersheds, this is where we really think that smart solutions need to be implemented to evaluate and optimize nutrient mitigation efforts. So whether that's a constructed wetland in a rural watershed, or if that is some sort of targeted treatment system or green infrastructure, excuse me, in an urban watershed, the ability to assess with high density, in some cases real-time data, the performance of these mitigation efforts, and even in some cases push towards real-time control, responsive management to improve their performance further. This is where a lot of the value of the smart lake is going to come in when it comes to dealing with harmful algae. And of course, the eventual goal is to be able to work right up to the edge of the field and address these challenges in partnership with farmers themselves. So, here we'd like to look at, how do we control the nutrient runoff with best management practices or smart devices? And how do we monitor the performance of those interventions, not just in the watershed, but on the field or at the edge of field itself? And the goal here is really to push towards, concrete returns on investment for farmers. Things like nutrient recovery and reuse that can have positive impact on their bottom line. So these are some of the ways that we're thinking about how a smart lake can intervene in the harmful algal bloom issue. And over the last few years, really since 2017, we've been advancing this vision and trying to work towards, actualizing these different interventions across the Lake Erie region in a couple of different ways. We've been running innovation competitions like our Erie Hack, which is a broader pitching competition and accelerator program to bring new innovative technologies to the fore. There's our more focused Internet of H2O competition, which had research groups and small companies developing and implementing software-defined networking and real-time nutrient monitoring for this application. We're also engaged with a number of partners on research projects, trying to push the fundamental science on harmful algae and understand how higher frequency, higher granularity data collection can really help us improve our understanding of these issues. And then finally, we're really interested in concrete projects. How can we actually leverage smart lake technologies to have bottom line impact in terms of reduced harmful algal blooms, or at least reduced nutrient pollution in the near term. And so now I'll just talk a little bit about a couple of these projects that we're working on. The first one is led by our partners at Limnotech, an environmental engineering firm based up in Ann Arbor. It's supported by the Great Lakes Observing System, NOAA's Great Lakes Environmental Research Lab, and ourselves at Cleveland Water Alliance. And this is really a project to stand up smart telemetry for open water networks. So it's an application of LoRaWAN, the low power, wide range area network that is excellent for connecting and provisioning outdoor Internet of Things sensors. So our goal with this is really to reduce the data transmission costs for existing Lake Erie observing assets and data users. So all those in situ sensors that are currently out there, most of them have historically used cellular connection, which is much more expensive than a LoRa connection. And so reducing the kind of cost of maintaining fundamental monitoring infrastructure is one of our big goals with that project. But it also really is exciting because having a LoRa network bathe the Lake Erie space allows for easier connection and provisioning of new sensors, not just reducing cost of existing ones. And so we're really excited about this as an opportunity to, engage the citizen science or hacking communities, not just kind of professional researchers or utility operators in water quality monitoring and helping to really bring the next generation of technologies to these local community groups that want to be monitoring their resources. And of course, by staying on the cutting edge and implementing LoRaWAN, it allows us to pilot next generation Internet of Things networking approaches that will allow us to continue to innovate, how we connect these data and how we pull them out of the field into the internet and then, into dashboards and visualizations. The next project I'd like to talk about is focused more on that nutrient mitigation component. So this is a project, again, with Limnotech, but also with Ohio's Department of Natural Resources, where we're working to launch a demonstration smart wetland with low-cost sensors, again, using that LoRa telemetry. And the goal here is to build upon a really established watershed monitoring system at the Old Woman Creek National Estuarine Research Reserve to validate some of these emerging lower cost technologies and actually push towards establishing new state standards for watershed performance monitoring, so that these lower cost devices can become a much more scalable infrastructure model for how we monitor these types of nutrient mitigation projects. So, this is all about scaling for us. This project positions scaled implementation at multiple new nutrient mitigation project sites across Ohio that are being driven by Governor DeWine's H2 Ohio Fund. So there's a real need to have these lower cost monitoring standards in place so that robust monitoring can scale at the same rate that these projects are being implemented. And then there's another opportunity for scaling through the National Estuarine Research Reserve, which Old Woodman Creek is a part. This is a NOAA program that encompasses 26 sites across the country of different estuarine environments, ecosystems. And so there's possibility for, leveraging the comparison to Old Woodman Creek's existing monitoring system to validate these technologies for use in other NAIR sites. And this is a currently undergoing project that has funding invested in it. And we've been implementing the project in its first iteration over the course of this summer. Another project that we're working on is focused on citizen science and getting volunteer monitoring programs engaged in the Smart Lake. So this is a project that we're leading up in partnership with community organizations and foundations. And the focus is really on supporting existing volunteer monitoring programs with new technologies. So over the course of, this is again a pilot program for this year, 2020. We've been pushing out handheld data collection devices, specifically a low-cost spectrophotometer that's open source that can do nitrate and phosphates. So getting that into the hands of volunteers across the region is really scaling our ability to collect nutrient data. And then we're also working to establish a shared data management and analysis infrastructure for these volunteer monitoring programs. You can see the 7 communities that we're partnering with on the map on the left of the screen here. And we're working to get all of these communities using the same data platform and set of data standards so that volunteer collected data can, increase in credibility and usability from the perspective of management. And yes, so I was kind of connecting into that, the purpose is really to not just drive increased data collection, but streamline the way that volunteer collected data can be brought to and be usable by researchers and decision makers. And this is a program that'll be running over the next 2 years. We're kind of wrapping up the first year right now. And the last project I'll talk about is a collaboration led by the Great Lakes Observing System, as well as the Council of Great Lake Regions, which is really focused on building broader support for Great Lakes data infrastructure. And this is called the Smart Great Lakes program. And so this aims to engage key industry stakeholders across the region, as well as federal research and infrastructure partners to really create an ecosystem of smart water actors across the Great Lakes region that can drive the type of collaboration that we've been realizing in Lake Erie and share best practices as we really try and push for not just a smart Lake Erie, but a smarter Great Lakes. And one key kind of step in this process has been a NOAA Ocean Technology Transition Grant that was really focused on operationalizing the harmful algal bloom early warning system in Lake Erie over the last few years, which is a project that, again, was led by Great Lakes Observing System with some of the same partners, OSU, Limnotech, and us at Cleveland Water Alliance. So we're really excited to be wrapping up that project now as well. So that's just a brief overview of kind of the history and the work of Smart Lake Erie as it stands. But we're really excited looking forward, towards a vision for the future. We really see Smart Lake Erie as a potential platform for innovation and collaboration across the Great Lake, and potentially across the Great Lakes eventually. As this data infrastructure and monitoring system is in place, and more established, more standardized, more institutionalized, it'll be easier to test new sensors, test new networking protocols, test new analytics and visualization tools, all on this kind of platform of a smart Great Lake, so that these new tools, as they emerge, can be more rapidly piloted, implemented, and scaled in this application space. And we're interested in scalability, not just in terms of geographic scope, but also in terms of issue area. On this presentation, I talked a lot about harmful algal blooms and nutrient pollution, because those are really the kind of front and center water quality issues that we face right now in the Lake Erie region. But there are a number of legacy issues as well as emerging issues of water quality that folks are concerned about in the Great Lakes. And I'm sure that, folks on this call will be very familiar with a lot of those. And so as new monitoring solutions, analytics or action frameworks are created around these new issues, our hope is that, the Smart Great Lake will provide an implementation platform for that, and also be able to help push out the data that's being generated to be easily shared on other data platforms like Great Lakes Observing Systems platform or federal water data platforms. And we really see this as a way to drive collaboration and innovation at the regional level. It can be really challenging to bring together multiple communities to have conversations about smart region strategy, particularly in the Rust Belt region, where a lot of us are pretty behind in the smart city space. But management of this truly regional problem that already has state and province level goals around it really serves as an opportunity for individual communities to pull together within a common framework and establish something bigger than we could do individually. So we're really excited about that potential as well. With that, I'd like to thank you for your time. I know that there's a lot going on in these 24 hours of water, and a lot to be excited about as we get towards WEF Tech Connect. But I encourage you, if you have any questions, and particularly if you're in the Lake Erie region interested in getting engaged, to reach out to me by my email. And I'd like to just thank folks again for taking the time. I guess it's time to count down and power up for WEF Tech Connect. Have a good rest of your day.